Hi, I'm Jeremy, the Zoo Nerd, coming to you live from my backyard in beautiful Los Angeles, California. How's everyone doing today? I hope you're well, happy, healthy, and having some fun. Today on Critter Chat, we're going to continue our celebration of Shark Week by talking about the largest of all shark species, and in fact, the largest of all fish species. Today, we're going to talk about whale sharks. Whale sharks are amazing animals. I grew up not really knowing much about them. I had seen an infographic when I was a kid that said they were the biggest of all sharks, and I thought, wow, that's huge. And it had shown on the wall how big they were compared to other shark species. But I really had no idea about them, had never even seen a photo of one or video of one until I was an adult. The photo I posted earlier today on Facebook and Instagram is a photo I took, and I'm very excited that I have seen them now in an aquarium setting. They exist at one aquarium in the United States, at the Georgia Aquarium in Atlanta, which is an amazing place to go. But today we're going to talk a little bit about this species, and I'm being asked what is my favorite shark. I'm probably gonna say whale sharks. They're really, really cool, and they're very, very unique, and we're still learning a lot about them. And that's something that is always very interesting to me, is when we're still learning a lot. So they are the largest of all sharks. They're the largest of all fish, as fish are part of sharks. In yesterday's Critter Chat, I talked a little bit about what makes a shark. So if you haven't watched or listened to that Critter Chat, I encourage you to do so. It's up on YouTube or on my webpage at jeremythezoonerd.com, or you can find it on the Facebook profile. So how big can a whale shark be? Well, the record length was 61 feet and 7 inches. The average is smaller than that. The average is still huge, though, between 18 and 32 feet in length. So if you look in my video, the corner to the fence over there is about 55 feet from where I'm standing. So that biggest shark would have gone all the way over to that corner and plus a little bit. So they can be very, very huge animals, and that's significantly larger than any other shark or fish species. So how much does that weigh? Well, they can weigh anywhere between 11 and 20 tons. So on that smaller end at 11 tons, that is still bigger than an elephant. So they can be very, very large animals. They're roughly the size of a school bus. Now, are they the biggest animals out there? No. There's whales that are bigger. There's quite a few species of whales that get bigger than that. And like those big whales, whale sharks eat very similar things in a very similar way. They are filter feeders. They eat plankton. They eat the tiniest little things in the ocean. Little shrimp, baby fish, jellies, fish eggs, other invertebrate babies that are floating around in the ocean. Whale sharks have very wide and flat heads. They have very small eyes off to the sides of their mouth. Their eyes are very dark colored, and it's tough to see them even in photos. Their eyes are only about the size of a golf ball. So for an animal that's that big, their eyes are really quite small. They also have 5 large gill slits. Most sharks do have 5 gills. Some have 6, some have 7, but whale sharks have 5. And those are kind of behind their eyes, kind of where their head meets the rest of their body. Their mouth, though, is huge, and their mouth is right at the front of their head. Most sharks kind of have a nose, and then the mouth is on the underside. Whale sharks, the mouth is right up front, and it's about 4 feet across. And that's so that they can get lots of water and lots of food coming into their mouth. So they take big gulps as they're swimming along, and they bring a lot of water and the little plankton and small fish into their mouth. And then they push the water out through those gill slits, and all the food stays trapped in. Now they have to eat small things because despite the fact that their mouth is so big, their throat is actually pretty small, only about the size of a quarter. So it has to be smaller than that for them to be able to swallow it. Globally, they live around the planet, but in tropical and subtropical waters. So places where the water is warm. Think of places near the equator, places that are very pristine and beautiful, clear blue waters. That's kind of where they like to hang out. With that, some of the best spots around the world for whale sharks are countries like Australia, the Philippines, Mexico, the Maldives, which are a group of islands in the Indian Ocean, Mozambique, which is a country it's part of southern Africa, Taiwan, which is a big island off of the coast of China, Belize, which is in Central America, Oman, which is a little country in the Middle East, and the Galapagos Islands down in the Pacific Ocean, and then a country in West Africa called Gabon. Those are some of the biggest places in the world where they see whale sharks often. Whale sharks are very mysterious because they are sometimes seen for a lot of days in a row in certain areas, and then they'll disappear. And they're usually kind of solitary, living alone. But when there's a lot of food present, they can be in the hundreds, and in some places even in the thousands in some areas. And then after a few days, they all start to disappear and kind of go their separate ways. There is very little known about their breeding. It's only been observed twice in the wild, and never in a captive setting, although the aquariums around the world that have them are hoping to someday breed whale sharks so we can learn more about them. With whale sharks, they kind of have a very odd birth process. They are a type of shark that is called ovoviviparous. That means that they have eggs, but the eggs stay inside the mom's body. So they have kind of a harder eggshell casing, and those develop inside her body, and then they hatch from the egg still inside the mom, and then she gives birth to them as live shark pups. Now, it's only been documented one time where a female shark that was super pregnant and ready to give birth was captured, and then she gave birth, and she had about 300 pups or baby sharks inside of her. Those baby sharks, even though the adults get so huge, the babies are pretty small, between 20 and 25 inches, so about 2 feet in length. Compared to smaller sharks, sometimes the babies are bigger than that when they're born, but they have a lot of babies that are kind of smaller size, whereas other species have just a couple babies that are a bit bigger. When the babies are born, they are fully formed and on their own. So they are off on their own. Nobody takes care of them. Nobody teaches them how to hunt. Nothing. As soon as they're born, they're on their own the rest of their life. With whale sharks, we still don't really know much about their early life. We don't know if there's certain areas where they go to have their babies. We don't know a lot about how fast those babies grow or develop. It's still something we have a lot to learn about. Same with the breeding. We don't know what time of the year or if there's courtship involved. We don't know if there's certain places where breeding is more likely to occur. There's just a lot we do not know. With whale sharks, as they grow, their skin gets super thick. On places across the top of their body, it can be 4 inches in thickness. And with that, as they grow, they have less and less predators. With adults having really very few predators, potentially some orcas or killer whales could eat them. And then the 2 other big predatory sharks, tiger sharks and great white sharks, will sometimes go after kind of the teenager whale sharks. But once they're adults, they pretty much don't have predators. With whale sharks, their coloring is super cool. They're kind of a dark gray on top, and on their bellies they're white. And then they have white spots and stripes all around their body. And with those spots and stripes, it's unique to each individual. So each individual has a very unique look, kind of like our fingerprints, but also kind of like zebra stripe patterns or giraffe spot patterns. It's unique to the individual. That means that it's really cool and really easy with sophisticated computers to track individual whale sharks, and they've been able to do that. With some whale sharks, they migrate huge distances. So I know that they tracked one who was living off the coast of Western Australia. And then that whale shark went north from there, kind of up by the Philippines, and then came back down to Australia. And then it disappeared for a really long time. Well, then about a year or two later, it showed up by the Maldives, which are islands on the other side of India from there. And then a few months later, it showed up in near Mozambique off the coast of Africa. And then after a few months, it disappeared again and then showed up back in Australia. So they can travel huge distances. With whale sharks, though, they recognize them as two distinct populations. So although the ocean's connected all around the world, it only connects in certain spots, and in those spots it sometimes is too cold for whale sharks to go. They like it warm water. And so the Atlantic Ocean population of whale sharks is isolated. They don't mix with the whale sharks that live in the Pacific or the Indian Ocean. Those two do mix back and forth between those two spots. But the Atlantic Ocean population represents about 25% of the global population of whale sharks, and 75% live in either the Indian Ocean or the Pacific Ocean population, and they'll migrate in different areas of those ocean basins. With their coloration too, they also, like I said, they're darker on top and lighter on their belly. We've talked about that a couple times in Critter Chat. That is something called counter shading. What that does is, and is especially important for them when they're younger, is if they're near the surface, which is where they feed, if there's another predator below them and it's looking around for something to eat, if it looks up, the white belly of the whale shark will kind of blend in with the surface of the ocean and the sky above it, and they won't be able to see it very well. Similarly, if the whale shark's in deeper water and a predator is up above it, if it looks down, those darker colors are going to blend in more with the darker colors below in the deep ocean and the ocean floor. So it helps camouflage them in the ocean, which is very important as they grow up. With whale sharks, most of their feeding has been documented at the surface. That's where a lot of the plankton and the small fish tend to live, is near the surface, because that's where they get a lot of their food. They eat a lot of things like algae and aquatic plants and things that are growing near the surface. With whale sharks, they, with their coloring and their spot patterns, they've been able to document individuals, and they actually use a very sophisticated computer program that was originally created to identify stars in the sky and to map constellations and the movement of stars in the night sky. They use that to identify spot patterns and stripe patterns on whale sharks. They do it with zebras as well, but with whale sharks, it's really helped us to learn a lot about where they go and when they go places, as they can track individuals over big distances through photos. What else was I going to talk about on there? Oh, it is thought that they can live up to 70 years. They think that some individuals have been around longer than that, possibly getting closer to the 100-year mark, but we really don't know. Again, this is a species that we still have very little information about, and we're still learning a lot about them. They are listed as endangered, which is a sad situation. It is estimated that their population on a global scale, on a worldwide scale, has declined about 50% over the past 75 years. They believe that they grow pretty slow, and that for an animal to be reproductive, to be a parent, takes about 15 to 20 years to get to a big enough size before they can reproduce. And with that slow reproduction, they're going to have a hard time overcoming that, being endangered. For many years, they were fished and hunted. They are highly valuable for their meat. People eat them. Their skin is used for leather. Their fins are part of the shark fin soup trade that I talked about a little bit yesterday. And they are also sought for their oil that is in their liver, in their internal organs. So they are still caught and fished in some areas, particularly countries like China, Oman, Mozambique, Tanzania, and Pakistan all fish for them on a limited basis. And in many other countries, they are fished illegally. Places like the Philippines, they think that there is a big illegal market in the Philippines to fish for them and then export them to other nearby countries where they are sold for high prices and eaten. They are also sometimes caught in nets that are used to catch other animals, particularly tuna. Tuna are huge fish, and the nets that are used to catch tuna are huge nets, and they sometimes catch a whale shark in them, and it unfortunately dies or sometimes gets caught, and then they harvest it and try to sell it as well. They are also susceptible to boat strikes, so getting hit by a boat, especially since they do most of their feeding near the surface, boat strikes are a huge problem for them. In many places they are protected, which is really good news, and in several countries they've created very important tourism destinations where you can go and either snorkel or scuba dive in areas where whale sharks are and go on boats to see them. Particularly places that have been very successful with this are in the Philippines, in Belize, and in Mexico. That brings a lot of tourism dollars to those countries and to areas that sometimes struggle to make a living otherwise, and that has proven to be beneficial as long as it's regulated and the boats don't get too close to where they could hurt the whale sharks. With my experiences with whale sharks, I have yet to see one in the wild, although I hope to do that someday. That would certainly be fascinating. I do have a couple of friends who have been to places in Mexico and have dove with them or participated in scientific research and been in the water with whale sharks, and it is something I hope to someday do. I have seen them in the aquarium in Georgia, in Atlanta. It's an amazing aquarium. It's the best aquarium I've ever been to. I highly recommend it if you're ever in Atlanta to check out the Georgia Aquarium. It's absolutely breathtaking, and to see the whale sharks there is definitely a highlight of visiting an aquarium for sure. If you really are interested in that, the Georgia Aquarium also offers a program where you can go into their big exhibit and either scuba or snorkel with the whale sharks, and that exhibit is phenomenally huge. It's called the Ocean Voyager. It is 6.5 million gallons of water. They have, I believe, 3 whale sharks and 4 manta rays, as well as hundreds of other fish, sea turtles, and other species that live in that exhibit. I'll be sharing some more about the Georgia Aquarium's exhibit later today on the Facebook page, so watch for that. Our special shout out today is for the Georgia Aquarium, who is doing a lot of scientific research on the whale sharks that live at their aquarium, but they also help fundraise for a lot of conservationists and researchers out in the world who are doing a lot of work with whale sharks, particularly some of the Gulf of Mexico population of whale sharks in Mexico and in Belize. They're fundraising for some of the researchers down there, and they've done a lot of really great study work on where those sharks go and what they do. There's also another special shout out today. It's called the Wild Book for Whale Sharks, and it is the photo database that I talked about briefly earlier. People who visit around the world and who ever see a whale shark, if they get a good photo of the whale shark, particularly between the gills and above the fins on the side. That's the area they really try to isolate and locate for the photo database. And with that, they put it into this big computer program that is designed to map the stars. And it is able to identify individuals based on those spots and stripes. And they have identified over 12,232 different whale sharks using that computer program. And they have over 75,356 sightings with a photo and a geographical location. So certain individual whale sharks, they've been able to track and monitor where they go and when they go there. And with that, they've helped to learn a little bit more about the important places that whale sharks use and make sure that they put in place specific laws to protect them, to limit the amount of boats in the area, and also to protect that area where they may be feeding so that there's not a lot of fishing or other activities going on in that spot. One of the great places that has done a lot of work in that regard is in Western Australia. A reef called Ningaloo Reef is a very important part of whale shark research. There's tons of whale shark scientists who are headquartered in that area and spend a lot of time learning about whale sharks. I'll be sharing more information about the whale sharks on the Facebook profile later today, so then make sure you check that out. And like I said yesterday, I talked about sharks in general. If you missed that episode of Critter Chat, go back on YouTube or on my website at jeremythezoonerd.com, and you can watch that episode. Or you can dig back through Facebook posts or Instagram posts, because they are there as well. As always, feel free to like, share, follow, and subscribe to any of my posts across Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and my website, and share that with anyone who may be interested in learning a little bit more about animals. Until tomorrow, be happy, be healthy, have fun. See ya.